Welcome back to Nightingale's Motorcycles, Metal Finishers and Restorers. Right, we're going to get on to a few bits now, a little bit more technical, and we're going on to the race side and engine tuning and coatings. And as you know, I've said in the couple of last videos that we're going to build some special engines and show you from the start how we kind of do it together, and what I do in a process as well with ceramic coatings. I'm also going to tell you a few things that I agree with in some things with when people have come back to me on piston coating. So I'll start on piston coating first, and tell you how we actually do it and what we spray out and what we do and why it's there for. So we'll take a piston first. All I've done is blasted it back with the correct material first off. Now you can imagine when you're blasting pistons, you know, you've got to get the media right, clean, correct. Housekeeping's got to be immaculate in all this stage, which I'm going to go through now. So I hope it helps you as I go through each individual parts and tell you what we're getting up to, and try and keep you awake on this one. So right, so we take a piston, you look at it, what we're going to actually do with it, or a ceramic coating, or you've had ceramic coated. You might have had some cheaper ones sent through the post which you purchased, which it looks like it's ceramic coated but it's just painted, and you can take that off with acetone even. But the idea of it's a dry lube, it's like Teflon, and it's a protection between the bore and the piston coating. Now there's a few different coatings. I'm going to stick to pistons first, and I'm also going to say some concerns I've had when people are asking me questions. I've asked the same questions because let's remember, you never stop learning, and years and years of doing this kind of stuff, and the stuff I'm going to show you, it does get quite heavy, and there's grey areas where people say, I do it this way, we've done it this, teams are doing it like this, and they're right. So what I'm saying to you first is, when you do a side coating, you'll see it where it's just grafted off to both sides of the piston. And then you'll see other pistons, or you'll see videos of ceramic coaters painting the full side of the sidewall, including the internal of the rings, so where the rings fit onto your piston grooves. So when you've got oil waste through and everything else, the first thing you're going to say is, well, not only does this close the gap up, but do I have to ring gap it all again? What do? Do you mask them holes out? Because I just watch videos where people are painting them, and I agree with you. I think the main thing to think is that how I'm doing them now is I'm using a micro slick on the sides after the prep correctly, and I'm doing it to the bottom ring. On this one it's an oil ring, and then on the top I'm just doing this top half of about 5 mil, and I add spraying into it, so I'm banding this area off completely, and you'll see when I've done one. So that's on the sidewalls, and I agree with you when you say, you know, does it, and you watch these videos and do paint them. I'm just staying clear of it because I'm a big believer on this, and I've sprayed ceramic coatings. And you've got to remember, a question I get asked is, how do you know what you're painting at? Well, you're on microguns, you have a set procedure, you've got a set prep up procedure, and usually we're on turnstiles, so it depends who you're spraying. So what we'll do first off, if you're doing anything, we'll either mask a top and we'll go at the sides, or we'll vice versa, we'll do the sides and spray the coating on the top. So what we do, we get a center line and we turn it with passes, and once we've got the pass rate in at the correct width away, where you get to know you're at the right level. So you're at the right level because you know in your mind where you're at. So what we do then is we go on to a paint thickness gauge, because we're looking really on the piston side skirts 12 to 37 microns of paint, so you know, minute. So that's on the side skirt. The next one's the top coating. Now this is a different coating completely. It's a coating I do valve heads with, and I also do the crown. Now this can vary, because what happens is when you mask this, and I usually do the crowns first, when you do the top of the piston, we're usually going from 12 to 40 micron. So there's a bit more on that, and the valve edge, because we're trying to retain the heat in this side of it. And at some stage I will show you, before these are coated, a blow lamp on the top and the heating transferring to the bottom of the crankcases. So, and you can't believe the difference once you've got this kind of coating on, what it's actually doing. There's no ifs or buts, it does work, you know, no matter what. It does work, it's proven it works, and a quick blow lamp test. So that's on the top, that's on the sides. So this is on piston coating. And then we'll go on to further coatings, what they actually do within the engine. The only thing I do a coating on, the valve heads I do with the same coating as the top. And the sidewall coatings I use on the stems of the valves. Again, it's a dry lube and it's a friction. So that's all what happens really in this area. But it'll be pistons first I'm going to show you. And the idea of this video is today is showing we're going to build a race engine from scratch over a period. So obviously when it's cracked down, some of the things here will be showing what I'll get involved in, and more technical sides of specialist coatings and coatings I've tried over the years. The last one on the pistons of questions asked, it's a good question this. They say, will it wear off? Well, if we had the cure to stop pistons wearing out, we've got it. Obviously it will, right? So the idea is, if you think of the early days on two strokes, you're going along and a race bike or a fast road bike, you're flat out, and just before she's going to explode and nip up, right, that coating might have just saved, or if it was early days of road racing, you know, your production racing, anything like that, you might save a crankshaft because you've just stopped it, prevented it, and managed to pull clutch in and save yourself a bottom end rebuild. It's all about longevity, and this video is about, if you have to spend your time in here and listen to different engineers what come in from some really high ranking companies and tuning parts, they all say the same thing. Once you could be a unit what comes in a crate, which is been made in a factory in Milton Keynes, and they assemble it and they put it back in, or it's a spare engine. They all say one thing: once you've done all your rolling roads and tests and all these super manufacturers bringing your parts in, they're looking for friction and coatings. Again, not only for, you know, wetting, but they're looking at it for longevity, probably reliability to get the maximum out of it. So that's piston coating, side coating, top coating, two different coatings on there. And the last thing I do in the piston sidewall coating, I also coat inside the cone of the piston with the sidewall coating. So my coatings will be top coat, side coat, will omit the rings, and I'm gonna stick to, on these I believe I'll be doing them on oven cure. The reason is these air cure in these two parts, you can 24 hours and you can touch it. The reason I'm doing it, because when I put the top coat on, I put it in the oven for X amount of time, I bring it out, I can go straight onto the side and start the second coating. Once this, not the top coat, once this side coating's done, just so you're going to be saying, how do you spray? Well, your 0.8 nozzles, you're spraying in a correct fan pattern. But when this dries off, be it oven or air cure, we're then going over it with a 000 wire wool. And what we do, we just burn shit across, and that would take any inclusions off. What you've got to remember, you're straining this probably at 325 on some of these paints in metal strainers, so you haven't got paper filters, contamination. You're ticking every single box, you know, even to the point if I didn't have a slap head, I'd have an airnet on. Contamination, housekeeping is a big thing to get this product correct. So we'll move on to the next thing. Right, so we've covered pistons, but if you just remember, ceramic coatings, reducing friction and shedding of oil. That's what it's all about. That's our main goal with coating components of internal parts of engines. So right, so moving on to crankshafts. So this one's poorly. The reason I got a couple of, well, some more coming in today is actually I can examine them, and also it's for further in the video. I'll show you what I need to know myself on certain things. So presuming a crankshaft comes in, Now remember, we're not an engineering shop, so the average man who'll bring something like this in will be a mechanic, an engineer, a race guy, a very competent person, and they'll have either sent the crank away and had it serviced up, or they have measured it and they're happy with it. And why would they bring it in then? Now, this would go more for your racing hill climbers, where you're maximising everything, or you're trying to maximise everything. We'll go on to that later on with the assistance of ceramic coatings. So when I say maximising, so when we talk about reducing friction, you lay a couple of things on crankshafts, and I'm going to go through this. And remember, this is, I'll come to this, this is a very small window of people who probably want this service. So when you start talking about the journals and looking at them and the mains, and you hear of polishing and different variations of how people do polishing. Now, I was talking to a chap yesterday who spent a lot of time in the States on Indy cars, and he's got a few ways he likes to do them, and it's a little bit old school for polishing these. Now, you'll also hear of ultra-high polishing. Again, we're trying to polish something up, tram lines out of it, even when it's just been machined. When you look at it, and I'll show you some markings on cranks and a brake here in a minute on a small scope. What actually happens is you'll have seen on videos that either people are doing it machine shops on belts, linear type belts that are probably a 400 type grit. And you've got to remember when another thing, when people talk about these, the hardness of this, you know, and when people are going in with the right grits, it's amazing how hard this product is. You're not going to make a difference at all by taking these back and getting rid of what we call tram lines. It sounds really heavy going, but to the eye you can't see anything. So back to the old school idea, they used to put sandpapers round and go on like pulley belts, shoelaces, and pull them and get a feel for it, a bite to it, and then different grades as you move up. Then they used to come to a polishing compound and then polish them for ultra high. You'll start hearing this now, so many different names to it, but ultra high polishing. It can be vibratory polishing. That's all come back around in a circle now. And it's quite funny because someone came in the other day and they basically said, I know a chap who he just throws them in this machine and after a couple of hours they're polished up. Well, it ain't as easy as that. You know, you can invest big money in these vibrating machines and the medias and the cleanliness of it all. And it's not just one machine. You know, you wouldn't just buy a machine and if you advertise the polished crankshafts, you know, it's billing home. It's a very small percentage, a specialist field. So coming back to myself on it, this man who brings it in, this crank, because I'm going to coat it, so I don't need the knowledge because it's not my problem. I'm part of a cog in the system, and then trying to make the engine with the friction and, you know, reducing the friction to give it a little bit more, which we'll go on to that in a bit. The thing I'm going to go on to first is, so there's polishing, there's belt polishing, there's vibratory rumblers. This guy still does it by hand, but then he puts a scope on it as he's going through it. So what I'll do is, I think at this stage, I'll actually show you close up. So if we get close up to a journal on here, onto here, so there is actually there's no finger marks, no grooving as such. And if you look at that, you might be able to just see how you think that's fairly polished. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to put my camera onto it. I'm going to zoom it in, and hopefully with a light, I'm going to get this close up and adjust this in and see what I see under it. Right, so I just don't know if that'll get that. Is that getting anything on there? Right, so you see that. So we'll move on to another one. We'll move on to another one. do a bit of focusing here. There. Move on to one at this end. Right, look at that. Is that on the camera there? Yeah. I'll just focus in for you. So what you actually see when you are doing things like this, you've got to have a bit of equipment. Where this comes in for me is, the debate is again a ceramic coating. So we see two different types. We see the ultra fine polishing of everything, again because we're reducing friction. The whole idea is reducing friction. Or you'll see a crank possibly coated completely with a ceramic coating. After a discussion yesterday, and this is kind of old school, I believe that by a crankshaft that comes in, and then you look at it, even if it's just been returned or whatever, you would go for a process of taking out the substrate marks on the actual journals and your big ends, your mains, and then ceramic coating everything. So you've got your substrate on your journals and your big ends polished. Remember, ceramic coating isn't a filler primer, isn't anything to, make your bores, it doesn't, if it wants a rebar, it's not building it up. It's a specialist coating, reducing friction. So what I need to know is, all the time, is when somebody brings it in, the first thing is there will be a competent person, because this isn't your average kind of work. And they have the choice then of what I've just said under a scope, removing some tram lines, polishing it to a grade, not ultra high polishing it. This is on your journals and big ends. And then putting it through the media, which we need to prep ceramic coating to, then coating it. Remember, the biggest thing is we're actually painting to 12 to 37 microns when this is coated. But at least this way, your substrate of the crank, even if it's machined or brought in, is correct. It's how we're doing it. I've put it past a few people and they agree. I think what it is, sometimes you don't get this kind of service, so it's a one-to-one with the customer. So that's quite interesting. And we'll follow this through when you see our main race engine being built. So what I'll do is, as well, as I say, a crank comes in, so it's not my side of it to plastic gauge it for checking the wears, because it's just been done, or the customer will have already done it. If that seems to be the most, everyone seems to use this system, and then there's the systems where you can mic it up and spin it out and see. Everyone's got their own take on it, but my concern is really looking at it, seeing what the customer's wanting, and we'll go from there. What I'll do next is this crank's smashed its end, snapped off here and destructed everything. So what I'll try and do here, again, I'll do it from about this side. I'll show you what we see, because this isn't important for me, the crankshaft, because I'm not on that side of it. The only time it gets a little bit more technical, if someone brings a gearbox in for coating. This is every cog, so it's stripped down completely, and you're identifying all the track marks and the more technical sides into gearboxes, what's happening. So someone might have not had it under a scope, but when you put it under a scope, if it was a race box, if it's been slammed down, or it's even a box that's been cut, and a relatively new box, you're still looking at it, because what you're doing is you're going to coat it, and that's where a little bit more advice, especially if they start breaking shafts as well. Crankshafts are not going to be because it's prior to coming in here, but I'm just trying to give you a bit when we move on to gearboxes. So what we'll do is we'll take what you see, because a breakage, also like a gearbox, it identifies what kind of fracture it is, a torsional fracture, anything. You could have teeth breaking, You can have your corrective pitting, anything going on. There's so much inside gearboxes that goes on. So I'll just see if we can just get this. So we'll have a closer look at that to what you see. And then this kind of tells us what I see. Right, so there. We'll pull her back a bit so you can, I'll just focus it. There you go. So you can also see some identification there of what's been going on as to what destructed this. You probably, a lot of times, as many race guys will say, sometimes you don't know. I mean, if you're souping these things up, you're just trying to maximise everything. Again, the friction on everything. But it's a good way of identifying, especially when we come to gearboxes. I think myself, it's a bit of a grey area again, because if you know certain bikes or even old cars or certain cars, and they used to jump out of gear, particularly a British Leyland car that used to jump, or they suffered from something, and certain motorcycles suffered from box or blew into the forks. That was just stock kind of stuff. I think as development's gone on, and these things explode, everyone's crawling all over them. There's now worse than building an engine back up and then it blows up again. Again, all we're trying to do again is reduce friction. So we'll move on to the next thing. So right, this is camshaft side. Basically what we do with camshafts, we measure them and check that they're okay. And if they're fine, what we do, we just put it through the procedure again, ready for ceramic coating. The same coating as we use on piston coat. And then what we do is when it dries, we're just putting a 0-0 on it of wire wool, just bringing it across, just as a taking any burrs off it or anything. There ain't any burrs, it's just taking the edge off that coating. When you see how this stuff's sprayed, when I said earlier with, you've got to be clinically clean, your gun, everything you do. I mean, I keep a gun separate, a new a water gun, brand new, just for pistons, cams, coatings, and everything else. But that's one out of one of my CBX6s. I'll do them up again for longevity. And then I think we'll go on to the last thing as people are coming in, and I do appreciate you watching and comments and getting involved, because we're trying to build this channel. As I say, we're based in Scarborough, North Yorkshire, if you don't know. 01723 370 399. If you like, if you'll press and subscribe, again, it's fantastic for us. This is a customer who's brought a head in. What he wants it gas flowing, valving up, few little tweaks, and then we've discussed ceramic coating. So I'll be using external colours, which will be approximately 625C, brake fluid, petrol resistant, and he's picking his colour scheme. So I think at this stage he don't really know what he's doing the bottom half on, but the top half I think he's going for a nice bronze. I'm looking at polishing these up, but on the inside of this, for reducing friction again, we'll be putting a piston coat application on the back of this, and maybe a little bit in the ports and that. So that'll be, we'll follow that through and see. They're just standard workshop stuff, this. So I think till we get this bike in, we are going to be a few weeks on this, but we will start from everything, as I said, I'm doing to this thing, and then it's going to be tuned, bits brought in, back and forwards, and hopefully you'll like this one, because if you like a bit more bordering on the technical stuff and what we get up to, you might find it interesting. As I say, the videos are random because we're jumping from one to another of what's happening in the workshop. I've got some Harley stuff in today. We're doing some forks in ceramic coating, the bottom half of the legs. We've got some subframes in a gold ceramic coating. So it's just bouncing from one to another as people bring stuff in. I've got some little sports mopeds from the 60s, some hubs in. So it's all interesting stuff, but we'll keep posting the videos. See if you seem to like these ones on the bigger race bikes and engines. And once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.